Shout out to USARK and all USARK members. If you don't know what USARK is, don't be ashamed. Just go ahead and click the third link in the description below. See what USARK is all about, okay? You never know when legislations are going to hit your backyard, so that's why it's very important to consider becoming a USARK member today. These numbers really do matter, and they look at it for consideration when it comes to battling legislation. So first and foremost, thank you, Phil Goss. Thank you to anybody out there who partners up and volunteers with USARK organization. Thank you for anyone out there who's a USARK member. And if you can't become a USARK member today, please talk about it on your platforms. Let your neighbors know, let all your pet stores know what USARK is here for, and it's here to fight for our animal rights. Thank you to every USARK member and USARK supporter out there. Choo!
1, 2.
What's up, everybody? Welcome into another edition of A Little Knowledge is Dangerous, the podcast where we go back in the day for the history of the reptile trade. Why, when you show up to a reptile show, all these awesome animals are there. And now we've got my good friend Eugene Bessette, who's been in the industry. My goodness, how long have you been in this space, man? 50 years?
Yeah, 50 plus.
50 plus years. I consider myself an old timer at 30 years. So we got a guy with 50 plus years. A Little Knowledge is Dangerous is brought to you by Ship Your Reptiles. Obviously the OG in reptile shipping. But Eugene, thanks for coming on, my man. And how's life treating you? How you doing?
Well, I've seen a lot of crazy things. And I mean, I legitimately started my business. This is one of the craziest years. I think everybody would agree. The weather's not helping very much recently. And I don't know who your target audience is or who's watching this. Supply and demand. There's people went crazy because of COVID. Everybody got on the boat, kind of like the tulip syndrome of the 1700s. Everybody thought they were going to get rich. Way too much product. The markets are flooded. The supply is greater than the demand. Yada, yada, yada. I've seen tough times, but this is one of the strangest tough times as far as things go. I told some people, and I've been advocating here in Florida since the early 80s, and about what we've done. I cranked up USARK Florida with Phil's permission. We sued the state of Florida. We just had verbal argument on our, I'm drawing a blank here, on our lawsuit. First District Court of Appeals. It went favorably well. We'll see what the judges rule. It's all about the jurisdiction, not necessarily the protocol of FWC, because our argument, not only for Florida, but for the rest of the country, is we don't sell wildlife. We sell captive bred and born animals. And I think we're the only animal industry, Chad, that you don't see people buying a cat or a dog or a bird or a fish, and they go, ooh, I want to be a dog breeder. Ooh, I want to be a fish farmer. People buy reptiles and they think they're going to get rich. They think that, they go to the shows and they have this false sense of security that there's money in it. Well, there's money in it for somebody, but it's very stagnant. It's very, very tough to do. And so reptiles are easy to breed. We've taught and educated people, in so many different genres, in so many different economies, in so many different countries. How to breed them, and there is a demand for captive bred and born animals, and that's what people want. So, you say how the business is going. I mean, it's multifaceted. We ship all over the world. We provide animals for the pet trade. It's primarily our focus now. The things that I love don't sell, which is venomous snakes and big snakes. No soccer mom is going to go buy a gaboon viper at Petco, so that's not going to happen. But her son or daughter may find one somewhere at a reptile show and get it. So. It is so many layers, so many things, and our time is so short here. But I'm looking for the new Chad Browns. I'm looking for the new Eugene Bessettes. I'm looking for the new Mark Bell or, somebody like that. Show me the new guy. Show me the new kid on the block. Show me the kid that's got the burn. Show me the kid that wants to be in the Hall of Fame. You know what I'm saying? He's 5'4" and he's in high school and he knows he's not going to make it in the NBA or the NFL, but he's got the heart. You know what I'm saying?
Yep.
So that's what I'm looking for when we hire people. We hire people of all ages. I said, I want your heart. I hope your butt shows up on time, but I really want your heart to be in it. And this generation of kids today, I've got a 20 and a 22-year-old, and they were taught a very strong work ethic. You got to work. Nothing comes free. So I think sometimes I'm aware of too much, Chad, because I've been doing so much stuff so long, trying to make sure that this industry is going to survive. People need to pay attention to the forces that want to put us out of business. it's tough, but I don't want to just ramble on, but I have a lot of thoughts. I have a lot of strong feelings. But the bottom line is, I think we're sitting on a gold mine. But are you willing to mine the gold? And how deep is it buried? How bad do you want it? How big is your burn? What are you willing to do? I don't know. Like I said, I'm not sure what your target market is of people out there. I have strong feelings and opinions, and I can back it up, and I'm willing to defend it. And I speak from the heart.
Well, a lot to unpack there. Thank you for
sorry. You
for
asked.
kicking this thing off in the perfect Eugene Bessette way. I've known you. I think I got introduced to you probably 1995, around there.
When were you in college?
I left college in 92. 93 was my rookie year.
Yeah, I met you in 91.
Well, we met in 91 when I was in college.
Yeah. You were walking around. It was Colorado State. What school did you go to?
Colorado.
Yeah, and you were with Cameron. Cameron was walking you around, introducing you to people.
Yeah, okay.
Cameron to Pedal.
So, and Cameron was the first guest on this podcast. So I've known you since, I was in college. So, 54 years old. So 35 years plus I've known you. Yeah. I've known you always to be a deep thinker. I've known you to be a guy who looks at the industry, looks at his personal business, looks at the health of those things. How can I maximize both? How can I love on and care for other people at the same time? You're a fascinating character. I think the hobby is in a much better place when we have people like you in it. So let's just go back a little bit there. You gave us so much to go over, but go back a little bit to your beginnings in the reptile space. What started you here? Why did you decide, you know what? I'm going to spend the next 50 plus years picking up snake poop and thanks.
I'll tell you, when I went in the military in 69, there was no CITES, there was no Endangered Species Act. U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service was hardly existent. FWC in Florida didn't exist. They were at the Game Commission. Came back out of the military in 73, and we got this Endangered Species Act. We got CITES. We got U.S. Fish and Wildlife. We got. And I said, what the hell happened? The world's going to hell in a speedboat. Past all that, I got back to Gainesville, got out of the military. My mentor was Dr. Van Myrop, was a pediatric cardiologist. I met him in 66. And I said, Doc, what are you doing? What do we need to do? And he says, I need hearts. He said, what do you mean you need hearts? He says, I need hearts from pythons to study comparative physiological abnormalities so I can better understand how to work with children. Long story short, he said, we're raising up Burmese pythons. I need the hearts. And that's what got it started. I don't know. I was all in on what he wanted to do. And he's an amazing man. He's one of the founding fathers of the science of pediatric cardiology and used a lot of reptile hearts and crocodile hearts as well and some fish stuff. But that got me going, and it just grew and grew and grew, and then got to know some of the people in the zoo field. I got a relationship going with National Zoo up in D.C., and that's where I met Trooper in 74, and that was all through Dr. Van Myrop, his relationship with Dr. Marcellini, and it just grew and grew and grew from there exponentially, being able to do business with zoos, and there was, people importing, exporting, and everything was really the wild, wild west. I remember I had met Wayne Hill in 74, 75, and Wayne had a Burmese python. He was getting ready to go to Saudi Arabia, and he asked me to take care of it for him, and I did for like 5 or 6 years. And, Wayne came back from Saudi, and, he came back, I think, in 1980 and got interested in doing reptile shows because there was no place to do things. And, Wayne did the first reptile show, and he said, do you think anybody will come? And I said, yeah. And these shows, this whole network of flea market mentality type shows exponentially just grew and grew and grew as the interest and the love and the passion grew. And it really, really started an underground movement of sorts long before any retail giants got involved. In fact, the retail giants got involved because all the rest of us were blazing away and producing the animals and figuring out how to do this stuff. So I've seen a lot of changes, a lot of growth, a lot of good things. And the work is done by people out there, that are just doing the hands-on. And, I've had the opportunity to do some, expert witness legal work and various other things. And people ask me, where did you get your PhD degree? I said, well, I got one PhD. I said, I have two PhDs, one from the University of Home Depot and the other one from the University of Lowe's. I bought two post hole diggers because I said, in this business, you need post hole diggers to bury all the dead snakes or the dead animals, because they will die and you will screw things up. Just to mess with people. So I think for people, whether it's education or conservation or aesthetics or possession, be honest with yourself and follow your heart. And are you willing to pay the price? You're going to pay one way or the other. So, do your homework and think things through and try not to have an emotional reaction. And, there's so much impulse buying, and that's just human nature. And that's not going to change. But man, the market is hungry. I mean, people are buying animals, but they're not willing to pay what they need to pay. And there's so much product out there on the market right now that people are just, giving things away. And it happens. It happens in all markets. And I spend a lot of time in agriculture here in Florida. Cattle, hogs, swine, deer, chicken, poultry. I mean, the whole industry. It's amazing what the other livestock producers are facing. And we are livestock producers, and there's not a lot of people that do it to the degree that we do, or the depth that we do, or the consistency that we do. I mean, when I tell people, and I didn't want to do this, but I taught by one of the young people, Steve Tillis, who now has his PhD. He said everything needs to be barcoded. I said, over my dead body. I said, hell will thaw out twice before we have everything barcoded. Well, I turned him loose and I let him do what he needed to do. And after about 5 years, everything around here has been barcoded. Every cage, every snake, every egg, every shelf, every room, every building is barcoded. And the algorithms tell us what the hell to do. So I'm a data nerd. And I've had a lot of people from other industries come in here, especially livestock businesses, and they look at our database system. They go, you are insane. And I said, yeah, but I know what I need to know. And so we can tell people that all the animals that are born here, Chad, are conceived, born here by stock, that goes back many, many generations. So we're producing domesticated reptiles. We have been for decades, and we will continue to do so. Nothing here is from the wild. And that's the argument. That's the argument that I've been fighting for years and years. We're snake farmers, we're turtle farmers, we're fish farmers, we're cattle farmers. I don't know, man. I mean, I just, sometimes I feel like Don Quixote just chasing my windmill. Where's it all going? But I don't know, dude. That's what I'm called to do. I mean,
okay. Well, speaking of that calling,
yes.
And speaking of data, let's go back to the unlocking of the incubation for green tree pythons. Now, I think folks show up at a reptile show and they see either, farm bred green tree pythons or true U.S. captive bred green tree pythons. And they just think that somehow this is just an easy part of it all. It took someone like yourself, someone like Dr. Van Meijeren to crack the code on that. So, someone with an analytical data mind like yourself and working with a guy who's got a doctor's mind to figure out how that needed to work in order for this species to be what it is in the hobby today. So that's kind of the point of this podcast is you are a pioneer. You pioneered something that folks who walk into a reptile show have no knowledge of what it took to make that happen. So how did that happen? How did you and Doc get together and put your big brains together to crack the code?
Well, I got to give Dr. Van Meijeren a lot of credit. He taught me how to think. And I spent a lot of time with him at the hospital on various things. And I got to see a lot of things that most lay people would never get to see. And he poured so much into me. And he was a father. He was an uncle. He was a best friend. And I think, you talk about the green trees, what a romantic trip that's been. He was coming back from Russia and he stopped off at the National Zoo. And Dr. Van Meijeren was born in the Netherlands and East Indies, back. Well, no, he wasn't born. I think he was born in Holland, and he moved to the Netherlands and East Indies and was raised there. And he became caught up in the war. He was a prisoner of war for 3.5 years. His autobiography, Dr. Bob, he said, I was an uninvited guest of the Emperor of Japan. So all that being said, he was exposed to the wildlife of that part of the world. And coming back from Russia, one time he stops off at the National Zoo in D.C. He meets Dr. Marcellini, and he was really wanting to look at green tree pythons. He was always fascinated about them. I knew about him, but I didn't know about him the way that he did. And he was, way ahead of where my thinking was at. So Marcellini said, I got a young guy here, volunteers, fixing to go to work at the zoo. That was Trooper Walsh. And that's where the relationship really took off in the early, I think 73, 74, something along those lines. Trooper and I became incredibly close, best of friends, and the three of us working with Doc spent a lot of time, working on green trees, and I mean, it's just, I can't do the due diligence other than to say that Trooper and myself, we hit it really hard for about 28 straight years producing. I used to have at least 100 adults in production all the time, and it was a tremendous amount of work, raising up green tree pythons and dispelling all the myths. And we did a lot of really cool metabolic studies. I had medical incubators here, so we were measuring the PO2 to PCO2. We're measuring the temperature. We just went all out, just nerd to the max on the data. And bottom line is, I tell people, just treat chondros like an expensive corn snake, because that's really what the hell they are. And people would overkill or overmist or do stuff, and they don't understand the physiology of a fetus. They don't understand the gas effect. These animals, God, they need a high CO2. They're like 15, 16% CO2. And there's a whole bunch of other metabolic rate indicators that are involved in there. And I could easily just sit down if somebody wanted to call me or talk about it. But, we figured out how to make the cookies without burning them. And I told Trooper, I said, we made a lot of money and we had a lot of fun, but it got to the point where it was a duplicatable process. I said, we've taught a ton of people how to do this. I said, the market needs to balance itself. People got farms going over there in Indonesia. I know Michael Cole had some, Cameron had some. There were some guys from Russia that I met that came here in the early 80s at UF to visit Dr. Jacobson. So, it was exciting to see indigenous people farming these animals, making use of their natural resources. And there was some, problems and questions and various things, because the animals come from all different localities and elevations, and just an amazing animal. But it was crazy. It was fun. And I remember one night back in those days, I was working at the post office, and this is when Eastern Airlines was around, and Trooper said, "I'm sending you a box." So he sent me a box, and he sent me some babies. And I get home, it was like 2, 3 in the morning. I finally opened up the box and opened up these little containers that he had put little baby chondros in. And I had never seen a maroon chondro. And I was expecting to see something yellow. And I dump it out, and this maroon and yellow flecked animal, totally blew my mind. And I picked up the phone and I called him up. A lot of expletive deleters and everything. Hey, this is the coolest pop thing like that. And the Trooper, man, a few words, he says, "You like it?" And I said, he said, and then he hung up the phone, and that was it. And that was the first time I ever saw any red-faced chondros or anything like that. Didn't know anything. And so both of us were experimenting. And I know that Trooper, I think trying to think of the guy that, his name escapes me, but he brought in a gravid chondro from Indonesia, laid eggs in the box. Some of them were actually, the female clutched around them. God, I can see his name. I just can't remember it. Anyway, who?
Switek, right?
Switek. It may have been Switek. Yeah. I've forgotten a few things.
There was an article in Reptiles magazine 20, 30
and
years
anyways,
ago. Yes.
I remember some, the zoo out there got some. Trooper got some at the National Zoo, and I'm trying to think. I think Bertucci or Louis Porras got one down at whatever their name of their business was. It escaped. I'm trying to remember all these names right now, and this is pulling on my hard drive. But anyways, they were the first, and it started. It was kind of like Genesis seed stock, and so very blessed to be on the cutting edge of all of that stuff and learning so much stuff and doing so many things. And I could tell you horror stories. I can tell you crazy stories about green trees. I'm just glad now, Chad, that, and I told Trooper, I said, we got to let it go. You know what I mean? Just give it to the masses. Let it go. It's not about you, Trooper. It's not about Eugene, Trooper. It's about the animals surviving. It's about people being able to have them and be able to be affordable. Back in those days, I was getting $7.50 a piece. And, you might be able to buy a second one. And I would just describe the animal over the phone. I didn't need a picture. I just would describe how this animal looked and use your imagination as a blank palette and just paint this picture. It was crazy. And I remember one of the first expos, you may have been there. I think it was when Wayne moved us from the main room and had the other room, and he stuck me over there in a corner. God, I'm trying to think who I was next to. But we had a lot of room. And so Trooper had some big chondros. and fancy things than I did. And so we brought all these 20-gallon upright aquariums. We put them on display, and we had 25, 30, 40,000, $50,000 condos. They were every color in the world. And all the Japanese are just taking pictures like crazy. That's all you could hear was just. And I had some people come up to me and they say, "Man, where you get the balls to say that snake's worth $40,000?" And I said, "Hey, dude." And back then I was not as laid back as I am now. And I said, "You got one that looks like that?" He says, "No." I said, "Then get out of here. Go away. I got one. You don't got one." You know what I'm saying?
Yep.
And they said, "Well, what makes it worth $40,000?" I said, "I'll tell you what it makes it worth $40,000." I said, "You walk up to me and you got your little fanny pack and got all your little $100 bills. You know, some of these New Yorkers and stuff like that." I said, "I don't care about your money. I spent decades getting here. It's more than $40,000, $50,000. I said, I'll tell you what, for $39,999.99, I'll take the damn thing home. I brought it with me. I'll take it home." And that's always been my attitude about the animals is I know what they're worth. If you don't see the value, you don't appreciate the value. Oh, well. Mm-hmm. Well, let's move fast forward. The markets have changed because we have so much supply. I don't know how many green tree pythons are out there right now, but I know there's plenty, you know, and they make a good pet with the right person that has the discipline that knows how to take care of the animal. Anyways, just so many stories like that, on and on and on. And we just, man, we had fun doing a lot of firsts, and everything was a first, you know, and then the shows started happening. And next thing I know, Cindy and I are running up and down I-95 and I-75 and doing shows. And then it got to a point where, no, you can't keep this up. This isn't the future because of production and because of people's interest. And so the industry is, I mean, exponentially, it's grown. Whoever would have thought somebody like you would have a shipping business just on reptiles? It's huge.
It's pretty bananas. It's pretty bananas. All right, so we rode the wave with the green tree python, and then you jumped on the Burmese python wave, and you were doing all the big stuff.
Well, I was doing the Burms before I was doing the green trees. I started with the Burms. Yeah, I didn't know anything about breeding Burms, and I'll tell you, the first time we bred Burms, I had this male Burm. I named it John Galt because I was an Ayn Rand fan. And then Wayne had a female Burm that he brought to me. He delivered it to me in the backseat of a Mustang with a blanket over it. That's how he carried it up to me. He's, you know, that's Wayne Hill. And it's a good sized snake. Her name was Alice. You know, back then we gave them names instead of numbers.
Right.
And I didn't know a damn thing about breeding Burms. And so we put John Galt in there with the Burm, and they locked up. They copulated for about 30 minutes. And I'm sitting there, you know, drinking a beer, and Dr. Van Meyer smoking a cigarette. And they got done breeding. He says, "Well, they're done," you know, with his heavy Dutch accent. I said, "Done what?" He said, "They're done copulating." "So she's pregnant?" He says, "Yeah." We didn't know anything. And I said, "Okay, fine, put her away." Well, we got 61 slugs and one viable egg, and the viable egg eventually died. It was pretty weak. And I said, man, more sex. Right. Need more sex. You know, what's enough sex? Anyways, that was mid-70s. And it just grew exponentially, and we tried all kind of different temperatures and things of this nature, and it really got crazy. And then when I moved out here to the farm that we built out here in Archer, that was in '89. I think we had 56 or 60 big females that we were breeding. And then Mark Bell had moved from Michigan down to Naples, and he had over 300 adult female Burms. I mean, he was crazy. And I mean, I was buying up rabbits from Georgia, Alabama, all over hell and high water, trying to feed my snakes and feed his snakes. And I'm kind of glad the Burms went away because it's a lot of work, a lot of fun, but a lot of work. And I'm a fan of big snakes, but they're not for everybody, you know. And but we learned a lot with the Burms. I mean, I could talk to you all day about that and the things that we learned. And there's just been so much stuff that the only way any young man or young woman, Chad, is going to learn this is to do it. There's no school that teaches you how to do this. And it's sad. There is an economic need for this, but maybe it's not big enough yet like it is for cattle or for chicken. So I want to make sure that we survive. I strongly believe that there's an economic need for reptiles of all flavors, whether they have feet or whether they crawl or leap or whatever, or swim. It's our responsibility to produce them. It's our responsibility to take care of them. They're not all going to be scalable in terms of, you know, marketable. Not all snakes make really good pets. There's certain snakes that do make good pets. and then they can accomplish the mission that needs to be accomplished to get people to care about animals, to care about where these animals come from, for all the right reasons, whether it's, in Colorado or in Florida or in Bogo or Tanin or Indonesia, whatever part of the world. It's a huge question. It's a huge challenge. I don't have the answers. I'm just digging, bro. I'm just digging. And I've been digging and digging, and sometimes I get tired or chopping wood. And it's like I told somebody one time, if I put my axe down, am I going to hear anybody else chopping wood?
You always
I don't know. A lot of crazy stories, and man, I mean, the people that I've met.
Yeah.
I mean, everything in life. I mean, look at you. I mean, you went to college, but you got into the NFL. You know, the relationships you made. It's not what you know; it's who you know. And you've done really, really well for the industry and for everybody around you. You've been a blessing. You've done exponentially so much good work. You've encouraged others without maybe necessarily wanting to encourage them to do stuff. But you have, and you'll be blessed for it, So, and I've seen a lot of success stories like you in other people. So I was telling one of my employees the other day, I said, the payday in this business is not about the money. I mean, we've gone through a lot of money over the years. But the payday for me, Chad, is watching people grow up, watching people, really do something with their lives. And a lot of them got out of this business and got into other industries or other businesses and excelled. And they wouldn't have done it had they not done this. They needed to learn the discipline. You follow me? So that's been a blessing. I mean, Chad, how can I put a price tag on that? Listen, I paid a hell of a price. It's been a hell of a year. But Chad, I'm one of the luckiest men and the most blessed guys you'll ever meet. I don't have a Super Bowl ring, but I got relationships with people that are worth more than Super Bowl rings or gold trophies. You know what I'm saying?
Yep.
And you taught me a lot. I got to say one thing for your followers out there. Two things that I always remember about you.
Sorry for the interruption, folks, but a quick word from our sponsors. Longevity is one of the biggest things I strive for when it comes to thinking about being a part of the reptile industry. That's why I'm very proud about today's sponsor, Mark Bailey over at Mark Bailey Reptiles. 40 plus years, full-time reptile keeper, enthusiast. This guy, you can catch all his amazing ball python projects on Morph Market. So make sure you head over to Morph Market, and that's Mark Bailey Reptiles on Morph Market. See what he has available currently. And I got to tell you one thing, he's one of the biggest and most respected ball python breeders we have today in the ball python game. So shout out to Mark Bailey over at Mark Bailey Reptiles. Thank you for all the support. And again, make sure you head over to his account on Morph Market, see what he has available. Thank you so much, Mark Bailey over at Mark Bailey Reptiles. Cheers!
And they cracked me up. And I remember you said when you flew out to Seattle on that jet and they paid you a stupid amount of money and you paid the IRS and you went out and bought some silk socks. They were $2,000 a piece. And you thought, oh, this is cool. No, this is stupid. This is crazy. No more silk socks, $2,000. Then the other thing, I've never forgotten this, and I want to thank you for this. You were humble enough one day, we were having an interesting conversation, and just out of the blue, you said, I'm one play away from being a quadriplegic. And I said, damn, is it worth it?
Right.
And luckily you got out alive, brother.
Yeah.
But there's some guys, Chad,
that don't. Yeah. Knock on wood for sure.
And you're in a small fraternity of active as well as inactive NFL players. So you made it, brother.
Thanks, my man. One of my favorite things, obviously I was able to bring 65,000 people to their feet, sacking quarterbacks and doing all that. Now, not the same level thrill, a very different thrill, but still thrilling nonetheless, was when I would walk in to my warehouse and I would open up an incubator and I'd be like, oh my goodness, I hatched out another species of Asian rat snake, or this is the first time this combination of a ball python has ever been seen on the planet. I'm the first one to produce this version of living art. And so the incubator was always literally my favorite part of the process. And even when I was just hatching out leopard geckos and they weren't even fancy leopard geckos. They were just a leopard gecko that I was going to wholesale for $15 to Triple L Reptiles back in the late 90s. Awesome. But I hatched out more leopard geckos, and I loved that process. So I'm with you on, sometimes it's not the animal, it's the process that you fall in love with. But one last animal-related question for you before we let you go. When I was at your place, gosh, must be 10, 12 years ago, you were doing the the colubrids on a shifted system. You were creating an artificial winter in air-conditioned rooms, so you could have baby colubrids all year round. Did you come up with that? Was that one of your creations? Did you steal that from somebody so you could always have baby colubrids available all year round?
No, I think there was a lot of people. Mark Bell, when he was living up in Michigan because of the weather, was going through various things. And then when he moved to Florida, there was a metamorphosis. And then there were several other people that were kicking the idea around. Colubrids were much more scalable than, say, ball pythons. When I say scalable, in other words, to ramp them up for production. There were a lot of people. And then I think when Bill got his thing going with the gourmet rodent, in the late 90s, and because of what Petco wanted and the progressive demand of animals, started experimenting with different things. I know he had 8 colonies, and that kind of was a little bit of an overkill. And then for us, I watched a lot of other people. Some people crashed and burned, and others did real good. And it was finding that sweet spot, the right number. And so it wasn't my idea. Everybody, plagiarism is the greatest compliment in the world. One idea begets another idea begets another idea, And these are discussions that Mark and I have had. I said, Mark, I've taught you a bunch of things, and Mark, you've taught me a bunch of things. Who cares? If I'm not having a good day, then you can't have a good day. And if you're not having a good day, then I'm not going to have a good day. We all, there's plenty of pie for us to eat. But probably the one thing that really encouraged me was more about what the poultry industry was doing, and spending the last 25 years around a lot of true ag people, really shed the light on that process. And for us, we came up with 6 colonies, so that every 2 months something is going down, something is going up. And then with our database system in Harmony Murray, she's my colubrid manager. She's been with me 11 or 12 years. She taught herself how to code in Access and wrote an incredible database system. And we can track the animals, so that if we have an animal that was produced from a June, July colony, meaning that was their winter time, that those progeny, even though they're in a grow out room, they will be tracked and they will go back to that. And so we're starting to get to F2, F3, so that we have animals that are reverse cycled, and they know that. And just all these little sympathetic elements that kind of just key into the epigenetic structure of how these animals adapt. I mean, let's face it, on the equator, there's only 45-minute differentiation between sunset and sunrise for 365 days, dealing with the chondros and all the other stuff. So I think it was inevitable, and some people, the only reason we took, 2 months was it helps. In other words, we put that colony down for 8 to 10 weeks. We brumate them. We drop them down to 50, 52 degrees. We use the mini splits. We have a certain amount of discipline prophylactically dealing with nematodes and other things, because a lot of these colubrids will have it, even though they were multi-generational captive bred and born. It's just inherent, just like, $1 million dog will have a flea or a tick. It's going to happen. So it works, it's scalable, and it pays off, and we track everything, the numbers. It's duplicatable. Ball pythons, they can have, they're induced ovulators based on food, so it doesn't really matter the time of the year. But they're not, you can't treat a ball python the way you can a colubrid. I mean, you go out there and pick up those colubrids and take a body surface temperature thermometer, and they're 48, 52 degrees, and they're fine. They're crawling around. You do that with a ball python, you're gonna have a dead snake. So it wasn't my idea. I have just watched others. I've given people tremendous ideas over the years, and hey, if you're willing to work as hard as me, you
most
deserve
are.
it. Yeah,
Most are. Let's be clear about that, my man.
Yeah. So a lot of people, like I said, Bill did it on a large scale, and some things worked good, some things didn't work. I saw Mark Bell do some different things. There's a couple other people here in Florida that are out of the business that did some interesting things. Some people up north. I mean, it's just it's a matter. I just remember one year, like when you hatch out 11 or 12,000 colubers all at once, that's just too damn many. We need to spread this stuff around.
Right.
And so having huevos on the shelf so that we've always got so many thousands of animals, in reproductive stages, that kind of stuff. That's what the poultry industry does. The poultry industry has one egg layer for every American. So there's 337 million chickens laying eggs. Cal-Maine, the largest egg producers, poultry people based in Mississippi, they kind of set the pace because your wife wants cheap eggs.
Yeah.
She don't want to pay $9 a dozen.
No, not at all.
Hell no.
Well, man, this was an amazing conversation. I mean, there's just so much detail and knowledge coming out that big brain of yours. We could spend dozens of hours talking. I think
we can do it again, and we can do it again if somebody's willing to listen. I mean,
they need to listen, and that's the point of this podcast. Is folks like you have such a tremendous amount of knowledge, and so for someone to show up to a reptile show today and jump on their Instagram or their TikTok or their YouTube channel and proclaim themselves to be a freaking reptile genius, well, you stand upon the shoulders of Cameron Tepedlin. You stand upon the shoulders of Jeff Ronnie. You stand upon the shoulders of Eugene Bessette and the things that they've accomplished and pioneered and species that they brought in and incubation protocols that they developed. You stand upon these folks' shoulders. And that's why this podcast is called A Little Knowledge is Dangerous, because these kids walk around these shows and they got a little bit of knowledge, which makes them dangerous, not enough knowledge to make them smart. So that's the point of this, and I would love to take you up on your offer to do a part 2 of this.
Hey, here's one for you. I don't care how educated you are. I don't care how much money you got. I don't care how smart you are. I want to know 2 things. Are you wise and are you humble? And on that note, I love you. I'm always here for you. All you got to do is ask me, brother. I'll come.
Well, I love you too. I love you right back, my man. You have been an instrumental part of my reptile journey for now 35 plus years. Again, thanks for the knowledge you've given us here on the podcast. I look forward to part 2 with you. Take care of yourself. And
all right.
Another episode of Little Knowledge is Dangerous is done. Thanks, Eugene. We'll see you around, my friend. Take it easy.
Thank you. You're welcome, sir. Bye-bye.